They say the ocean doesn't keep score, that it just comes and goes, tide in, tide out, like time itself. But I've learned the hard way water remembers. It doesn't care about your paperwork or your fancy title or the HOA's latest letterhead. So let me tell you about the day my little patch of coastal heaven became ground zero for the most spectacular slow-motion train wreck I've ever seen. A story where arrogance built itself a throne and the tide came for the crown. You want to hook picture this? You're driving home after 2 weeks away, thinking maybe you'll spot a few deer in the marsh, maybe hear the gulls fighting over scraps, maybe just find everything the way you left it. Instead, you hit the brakes halfway down the gravel lane because the sun's bouncing off a half-built steel skeleton rising from your tidal flats your land like some corporate middle finger to common sense. Welcome home, right? Nothing says we missed you like a construction site nobody warned you about. I'd left for Mendocino for a change of air, a little quiet with my brother. 2 weeks, 14 days tops. When I left, those flats behind my house were nothing but mud, birds, and peace. The kind of place that lets you breathe after a tough year, after deployments, after losses you don't ever put into words. I come back and suddenly there's a chain-link fence, zip-tied shut, shiny new HOA property, no trespassing sign staring me down like I'm the stranger. Honestly, for a second I almost laughed. Thought it had to be a prank, wrong address, right? But the workers didn't look confused. They looked busy, swarming like ants in bright vests, pouring concrete digging holes, running generators that made the whole marsh vibrate with a mechanical heartbeat. The air stank of diesel, wet earth, and disrespect. I called out to the first kid I could find, some guy in jeans leaning on a stack of rebar. "Who gave you the green light to build here?" He shrugs. "Talk to the trailer," he says, like I'm bothering him for directions. So I find the trailer, march up, boots caked in mud, and meet Ryan, the site manager for the Seabs Bluffs HOA. Guy looks at me like I'm late to my own funeral. "We were told the board signed off," he says, waving at blueprints like they're lottery tickets. "This land's for community development. Permits, approvals, the works." But he flinched just a little when I dropped the word deed. Because here's the kicker, I own those flats all the way to the marsh, and every map and legal doc says so. But HOA, oh, they'd revised their access plan. Claimed they had the right to do whatever they pleased because, get this, they decided so. And when I tried to explain about tides and king surges and FEMA maps, they laughed in my face. Called me a fearmonger. Told me to show up at the next board meeting if I was so sure. Brad Whitmore, HOA president, he took over last year, turned the association into his own private fiefdom. The kind of guy who'd steamroll his own grandmother if it got him another 5 minutes of applause at the next monthly update. His voice over the phone, all oily confidence. "Your backyard borders at Dalton. The rest is ours to improve." And then, like I was 5, "If you have concerns, bring them to the proper venue." My blood boiled. That night I sat at the kitchen table, lit only by the lamp and the light of my computer, stacking deed over floodplain map over legal descriptions until there was no room left for doubt or lies. My land. Legally protected. No loopholes. And absolutely no room for the kind of improvements that start with backhoes and end with cabana bars. But I didn't sleep. Next morning I was up at dawn, GoPro strapped to my chest, walking every muddy yard, filming everything, the concrete footings, the pools of oil, the trash where marsh grass used to be. Even the birds knew something was off. Only a lone heron lingered, watching from the edge like a ghost. I took it all to the title company. Gloria, still there after all these years, found the digital deed in under an hour. No easements, no HOA claim. She certified it herself, sent me home with the files in my inbox before I'd even made it back to my truck. I dropped off everything, maps, photos, letters, at the HOA office. Door locked, of course. Next stop, City Hall. Danielle from Environmental Review looked over the paperwork, her brow climbing higher and higher. "That's a protected tidal basin. They can't build there." But bureaucracy grinds slow and the concrete sets fast. So I went to the next emergency HOA meeting uninvited. Walked right up to the table and dropped my folder in the middle of their blueprints and coffee cups. "You're trespassing," I said, steady and clear. "And I have proof." Brad didn't blink. "If you're dissatisfied, file a grievance." Construction continues. Then he tried to blackmail me over a shed in my backyard, petty threats from a man who thinks rules are for other people. So I got louder. Uploaded my evidence, my footage, my emails, built a case so airtight no one could bury it under paperwork. The HOA hit back with fines, chained my gates, called my fence non-conforming. But Danielle and Marcus at City Hall, they saw through it. They skipped every safeguard Marcus said, scanning the violations. If your ownership holds, we'll push hard. That's when I called in the heavy hitters. Hired a land surveyor, Randy, tough as coastal rock. We walked the whole boundary, stakes and all. This land's yours, he said, clear as daylight. I reached out to Melanie Ruiz, an old ally with access to regional development records. She sent me a folder of HOA documents that made my skin crawl: revenue projections, rental plans, a blueprint for a luxury resort disguised as a community perk. They called my ownership unverified, said legal would neutralize me. By the next board meeting, I had my binders, my evidence, my neighbors whispering behind coffee cups. I called Brad out, showed everyone the truth. The room cracked open, murmurs, doubts, heads turning. They tried to shout me down, but the facts did their own talking. No permits, no flood study, just dreams of cabanas on mud. And still the water kept coming. Then the tide calendar delivered its own verdict: super moon king tide, the kind of surge you only see once a decade. The HOA strung lights on the new walkway, posted photos online. But the night before, I walked the flats and marked the water line with orange stakes. By morning, the first stake was underwater. By noon, 4 were gone. My phone buzzed with missed calls from city planners, from Brad, from numbers I didn't recognize, but I just filmed the water creeping higher. That day, Karen, the vice president, in her famous red blazer, showed up on my porch, demanded I take my video down, called me a fearmonger. What's irresponsible, I told her, is pretending the ocean cares about your budget. She stormed off, threat hanging in the air. Next morning, the king tide hit. Silence except for the creaking of wood, the slow popping of string lights as the salt water reached their circuits. The whole luxury deck folded into the marsh beams, cracking water swirling through lounge chairs like the earth was swallowing their arrogance. Karen screamed as her storage bins floated away. Neighbors waited out in bathrobes, watching the flats become a lake. Reporters showed up. The city, the state, FEMA. I handed over the evidence, the maps, the surveyor's report, the video of the resort drowning. Leah Bauer from the California Coastal Environmental Protection Agency led a team through water up to their knees, took samples, shot drone footage. Karen tried to order them off, but Leah just flashed her badge and kept working. That night, the rain hammered down wind, driving salt through every crack. The resort was gone. What was left looked like a graveyard. By morning, bright yellow demolition notices and state investigation placards lined the ruins. Brad had vanished. Rumor said he was holed up in a motel up north, moving money before the law caught up. Karen, though, couldn't hide. She dragged ruined documents into the water, yelling at the empty marsh, blaming me, blaming everyone. But here's where the twist tightens. The courtroom. Packed house, neighbors in matching shirts, news cameras everywhere. Charges stacked against the HOA: illegal development, misuse of funds, trespass, ecological damage. The judge didn't buy a word of their defense. You poured $200,000 of concrete on someone else's land without permits because you assumed no one would object, he asked. The room was so quiet you could hear hearts breaking. Verdict: full restitution, personal liability demolition, and my land protected forever under state law. Relief wasn't loud. It was a long, grateful sigh. Outside, reporters crowded the courthouse steps. "What will you do with the land now, Mr. Dalton?" they asked. "Let it breathe," I said. "Maybe finally get some sleep." And so the story ends, not with vengeance, but with restoration. The state brought in crews, no bulldozers this time, just volunteers replanting marsh grass, building simple boardwalks, putting up wooden signs, Seeb's Flats, wetland reserve. The neighbors who'd once doubted me helped pull out the last of the rebar. Even the school kids came eyes wide at the birds and crabs and the way the tide glimmered in the spring sun. The old HOA dissolved, Brad banned for life, Karen gone to who knows where. The new board, led by Tom Morris and a group that finally listened, stripped away the old petty rules, refunded every fine. At the first open meeting, they handed me the mic. I told them I didn't fight to be a hero. I just wanted what was right. But somewhere along the way, I realized this wasn't just about my backyard. It was about not letting anyone bulldoze the truth, no matter how loud they shout or how much money they wave around. That night, I walked the boardwalk under a clean sky, the tide rolling in and out, steady as breathing. I felt the ground settle, and for the first time in months, I settled with it. See if there's a lesson here, and I think there is. It's that power doesn't give you the right to rewrite reality or to gamble with someone else's home or to believe you're untouchable just because you've got a fancier signature. The tide doesn't care about your agenda. Nature doesn't bend to your budget. In the end, truth always finds its way home, even if it comes in on a king tide washing every lie away. Now let me throw this one out to you. When does standing up for yourself cross the line into vengeance? Where's the boundary between fighting for what's yours and letting karma do the talking? And when those in charge abuse their power, what do we owe each other as neighbors, as a community? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment. Tell me where you draw the line between justice and revenge, or share a story where you saw karma play out right in front of you. Because out here on the edge of the tide, I've learned sometimes justice comes in waves, and you'd better be ready when it does.